I'm here with a very, very privileged guest, Mr. Shaun Attwood. Shaun is not only a published author, but he's also a successful podcaster, YouTuber, digital and political prison rights activist, and public speaker as well. Among other titles, Shaun has written the books Hard Time, Party Time Raving Arizona, The Mafia Philosopher, Unmaking a Murderer, The Framing of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, The Cali Cartel, Pablo Escobar, Prison Time, and my personal favorite, which is Life Lessons. Shaun has been blowing up on YouTube the last 8 to 12 months with incredible stories and lessons from his time in the American prison system in Arizona, which is the system with the highest death rate in the country. As part of his plea deal, Shaun is banned for life from entering the United States and currently resides in beautiful England. We are recording today from Spiral Studios in Guildford, Surrey, England. Shaun, good morning, and thank you so much for the privilege to speak to you
Hey, Alison, it's a privilege to meet you, coming all this way, flying in from overseas.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm meeting up with family here, and I was like, I want to hit up one of my recent favorite authors to see if you wanted to chat. So I'm really
Appreciate that,
grateful
man.
for that. And to start off today's conversation, I wanted to read an excerpt from your book, Hard Time.
Okay.
When I was a small child, I imagined that hell consisted of caves in which the damned were trapped, tortured, and burnt. I imagined serpents and indescribable creepy crawlies tormenting the captives. I never imagined man's nature could be so hateful as to recreate these conditions on earth. Before you described the conditions that you experienced, you grew up in what you called a loving middle-class home in England here. And the initial reason for your move to the United States was actually to become a stockbroker. And we were talking before the camera started rolling. You're still paying attention to the stocks, it sounds like.
Yeah, you said you had a GoPro camera, and I've watched GoPro. That was like a new issue. It was up around $100 a share, and it's crashed down to like $4 or $5 a share. So I'm wondering whether that's indicating their company might be heading for bankruptcy, or it's a speculative investment. Perhaps it will bounce back.
Well, maybe I should sell my GoPro. I still can. So you have long had an interest in stocks, and that was your initial reason for going to the States in 1991, I think it was.
Yeah.
And how long were you working as a stockbroker before you decided to switch jobs, shall we say?
So I started following the stock market at 14. I started trading at 16, but that was just me trading my own account. After uni, I became a stockbroker in America in my early 20s. And then in the mid to late 90s, I just started to see the potential from just making money from the party scene. Why do I want to be waking up, early in the morning, getting to the office at 6 a.m., working these long hours, cold calling, when I can just make money from the party scene? So greed and laziness took over at that point.
Yeah. Well, when you wrote that quote I mentioned earlier, were you referring to your specific prison in Arizona, or was that your entire experience, would you say, with the prison system?
That quote was written in 2003, 2004 at the maximum security Madison Street Jail in Phoenix, Arizona. This was a jail system run by Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and that system at that time had the highest rate of death in America. Not just gang members murdering prisoners, and I've got videos of that on my channel, but also guards murdering mentally ill prisoners. And the guards who did that, after they murdered these prisoners, they did it on camera, family members sued, and they were awarded millions in compensation. But afterwards, the boss of the jail, Sheriff Joe, gave some of those guards pay rises and promotions after they'd been found guilty in federal court of murdering those mentally ill prisoners.
Wow. I think for the layman, it is understandable why prisoners would be violent towards each other or kill each other, but why would guards do that to prisoners, especially prisoners who are, not as, strong or maybe disabled compared to other prisoners?
When Kennedy emptied the mental hospitals because One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest came out, and there was the outrage from the public, and he thought he was doing a good thing because they were getting treated horribly in these mental hospitals. By default, the prison system became the biggest house of the mentally ill. Now, in the jail in Arizona, there was a massive us versus them mentality. So the guards kind of look at the prisoners as the enemy and vice versa. And if the enemy acts up in any slight little way, the guards have to show their power by pulverizing them. Now, if you're a mentally ill person, say you've got schizophrenia and you've got symptoms of hallucinations or you're hearing things and you're not quite in the real world, and you are confronted with a guard who doesn't understand your complete mental history, but you start disobeying an order because one guy just refused to produce his ID. The guards pulverized him, broke his neck. He had severe internal injuries. He went into a coma and he died over a month later. So by having that many mentally ill people in a system where guards are just looking to put people down for the slightest infraction, it's inevitable these things are going to happen. But the sad thing is, when these things get into motion, watching these videos of the guards murder the prisoners, which are also on my channel, they go way beyond putting these guys down. It starts out with them putting these guys down, beating them up, tasering them, crushing them down. But then it's almost like they turn into animals, the guards. They're like a pack of wolves, and they can't stop themselves. Because there was one situation where the prisoners were yelling at the guards, why are you still beating him? Why are you still beating him? And then a female guard said, you need to stop beating him because he's turned blue. And they were still going like this on him. And the guards started yelling at him, the prisoners started yelling at the guards, why are you still beating him? He's already dead. And he was dead, and they still couldn't stop beating the corpse. So something animalistic takes over. And if you look at neuroscience, the amygdala, once that reptilian side of the brain, you do start behaving like an animal. You've just got that aggression pouring out of you.
Pack mentality takes over.
Yeah.
So this was when Sheriff Joe was in power, and he no longer is holding that position, as I understand. Are those conditions still prevailing to the same extent, or are they getting better?
Sheriff Joe lost the election after he'd been in power for 20 plus years. He was then convicted of contempt of court for racial profiling because he's a big-time racist, and he was looking at spending 6 months in his own jail. Then Trump pardoned him, and then he said he was going to run for Senate, so he might have more power than ever before. Now, the new sheriff that got in, as far as I'm aware, he has changed some of the conditions and improved things. Now, prison shouldn't be a holiday camp, jail shouldn't be a holiday camp, but it shouldn't be where guards are murdering mentally ill prisoners, dead rats in the food, cockroaches crawling off at night time, using heat as a form of torture. We're just covered in skin infections and bleeding bed sores.
The heat from like the desert?
Almost 50 degrees in the summer.
So, and what is that in Fahrenheit? That's like 110, I think, for the American viewers.
For the English, for the American viewers,
I think it's like 110 or 115.
We're looking at 120s.
120? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 50 degrees.
It's like an oven in there.
It is a concrete oven. So they have a vent at the back of the wall attached to what's called a swamp cooler. The only time that was ever working was when the county health inspector walked through the building. Then it went back to the broken setting. We'd be like, what's up with the
broken setting?
Yeah. We'd ask the guards what's up with it. It's broken again. As soon as they left the building, back to broken.
And was it to save money and a punishment, or just a punishment?
Both, I reckon.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. If you're sat around in that kind of a heat with hardly any air coming into this concrete building, and the building stays hot all night long because it heats up in the day, you are being cooked alive. So it looked at one point like I'd spilt battery acid on my leg. I had all these sores. You get a lot of them when you're behind because you sat around a lot. And when you're sweating constantly, your skin is turning soggy over time. So you are itchy and you want to scratch yourself. But you got to resist it, because when you do scratch yourself, clumps of your own skin just come off under your nails.
I hope I never have to experience that.
Well, that was one of the hardest parts, was just lying in the pool of sweat at night and the itchiness. All night long, that itchiness. Well, one night I managed to fall asleep on my side and my ear filled up with sweat. when I changed position, it just spilled all over my face like someone was touching me. It just freaked me out, woke me up.
So going back to when you were still not arrested yet, you were working in the drug scene. What was it like to have that kind of escalating energy where I know your gang rival at the time was Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was an underboss for the Gambino family, as I understand. And he sent one of his guys to, I guess, just knock the teeth out of one of your guys. And then you also got, shortly after that, you got followed in a car. And I actually saw this on your episode of Banged Up Abroad I watched on National Geographic. It's called Raving Arizona, I believe. Yeah. And what was that like to just kind of feel that escalating energy? Because it started out kind of small. Just there was the guys, I think they were just junkies looking for money when they showed up at your house when your parents were over watching a film.
Getting into the drugs business was a slow thing. It's like I fell into it. I was on drugs at the time, and I was just showing off, giving my friends pills for free. Now, when you start giving away pills for free, you attract a lot of friends. So then, like I said earlier, I started to see the business potential of it. Greed and ego is taking over. When I quit the stockbroking and we did these early experiments of buying 1,000 pills here, 1,000 pills there, they were just going like that the weekends. And this was the beginning of the organization. But there wasn't much danger present at that point. It was like, we were all just like, if you're on ecstasy, you're all sat around smiling and hugging each other, and all you want to do is dance and go out and have a good time. And what happens is, as you get deeper into the drugs lifestyle, then you start to bump heads with more serious entities. So at the peak of it, we were bumping heads with Sammy the Bull Gravano, underboss of the Gambino crime family. I learned that we were in competition with Sammy the Bull Gravano when all these big steroid head jock characters started to show up at the raves. And I'm thinking, who the hell are these guys, stepping on our toes?
Yeah.
Because I'd locked all the local people down. Now, my wife at the time, she had a lesbian lover, and her lesbian lover was going out with one of these guys as well, one of these big steroid head jock guys.
And they're all Italian, correct? Italian.
Or Italian descent, or some of them were just like big university jocks or weightlifters. And then there was also the white supremacist clique called the Devil Dogs.
And they worked for them?
Yeah, they were all Sammy the Bull's people. The Devil Dogs, they would beat the shit out of people and bark like dogs while they were doing it. Yeah.
Talking about that pack mentality again.
Yeah. So my wife's lesbian lover is going out with one of these guys, and he asks her to ask my wife if I will meet them. I still don't know who they are, so I'm extremely curious. So I go to this bar, I take one of my bouncers, he's got a gun. So I walk in with my wife, the bouncer comes in behind us, they don't know the bouncer's with us. They take us to this back room where this huge guy just tells everyone to get off the sofa, clears the room out, and we sit down. My bouncer kind of like sneaks into an area where he can watch us, he's got the gun. Because I don't know if these guys are going to try and kidnap me, take me out to the desert or what. So he's ready, to do something if they try and kidnap me. So there was a shorter guy called the Spaniard, and there was this huge guy. And the Spaniard, he was talking to me in quite a normal voice. And they said that they were getting a lot of pills, and why don't I start distributing their pills and working with them? Now, I was getting my pills out of Holland. I sent people out there with testing kits from Dance Safe. The pill will go like a purple-blue color, and that means it's got like pure MDMA.
High potency drug.
Well, it's a clean pill, because a lot of the pills these days, because drugs are illegal, these counterfeiters and gangsters will put any old ingredient in the pill.
Just fillers.
Yeah, and that's why you see sometimes a lot of people die at a festival. that's not real E, because that many people can't die from real E at one festival. That's because of these counterfeit substances. Now, sometimes those counterfeit pills are coloured. My pills were beige or white. So
is it true you sorry to interrupt, you had like a Batman logo or something?
There was on one time we did have the Batman logo. Okay. Yeah. So they're trying to sell me these coloured pills, and I'm saying I send people to Holland to get pure pills. I'm not getting any of your coloured pills. I don't know what's in them. Then the big guy jumps up off the sofa. Who the fuck do you think you are, disrespecting our pills? Don't you know who we work for? One call to Sammy the Bull, and we can have you taken out to the desert. So now I'm thinking, are these guys just spouting off, or is this the case? And it wasn't long before the peace didn't last. And they lured my top sales guy, Skinner, to a nightclub in Scottsdale under the pretext of doing a drug deal. Told him to go in the men's room, knocked his teeth out, took all of his pills, took all of his money. And I thought, right, this is getting heavy now, because this is reaching my inner circle of people. My thing was, if the police arrest any of the inner circle, anything bad happens to the inner circle, I'm next. So I moved approximately 100 miles over to Tucson. I'm in $1 million house in the side of a mountain. And to get into that community, Sin Vacus, you've got to go through a guard at a barrier, and he has to call the house to even let you up the street. So that gave me an added degree of security at that point in time. But again, in response to your question, it started out just having fun with my friends, showing off, buying them pills. 2, being one of the biggest ecstasy importers in the country, rivaling Sammy the Bull Gravano. And now these guys are coming after me. My life is on the line.
And that house in Tucson, was that where you were on the 16th of May?
No, I was in Scottsdale.
Okay, so you moved again.
Yeah, I kept moving.
Yeah.
Yes.
How many more times did you move after that? Was it so you went Tucson and then to Scottsdale?
Okay, this is like late 1990s now. I was paying rents. I mean, my monthly bills are about 30 grand. I was paying rents on, I can't even remember how many apartments and cars, so I could just rotate and do whatever I wanted. Yeah.
Wow. And on May the 16th, 2002, when you were in Scottsdale?
May 16th, 2002, I was in Scottsdale living with Claudia at this point, because me and my wife had separated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when the SWAT team came, yeah?
That's when the SWAT team came, yeah.
And what was that like, getting your door knocked down by a SWAT team? How many guys were there, would you estimate, that came in?
May 16th, 2002, I get up early, I'm on the computer, because I'd quit the importation now a year ahead. I thought I got away with it. Claudia talked me out of it. She'd pointed out the risks. So what happened was, I'm on the computer, looking at the stock market. Next thing I hear this vibration, and it's the stairs, all these boots coming up the stairs outside the apartment. Then, bam, 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 bam. Tempe police, we have a warrant, open the door. So I don't know if it's the police or someone just pretending to be the police come to rob me. So I jump up, look out the people, it's blacked out. But when I look out the window, then I know I'm screwed, because the whole complex is surrounded. Police cars, marksmen with rifles, SWAT team. I'm thinking, all right, can I jump out the back? No, that's not going to work. Can I get in the attic? No, that's going to not work. So all these things flash through my mind. And then Claudia's waking up. We're like, all right, what we're going to do? All right, we just better let him in, because we don't want to do this the hard way. But we get halfway through the living room, and then just boom, door just flies off the hinges, smashes against the wall. I can't tell you exactly how many cops were on that SWAT team that day, but it was like a small unit of an army. And they just fan out really quickly. And all the guns, you just see all these guns just pointing right at you. So I've had a one gun pointing at me before. I had a shotgun pointing at my face before, and things like that from drug transactions. But to see the whole apartment, just all these guys just
muzzles
fanning out. Yeah. And then you're thinking, if any one of these guys opens fire right now, trigger happy, thinks I've got a weapon, whatever, and there were weapons in the house, but I wasn't carrying a weapon on me. If any of these guys opens fire right now, I'm just mincemeat, basically.
Yeah.
So they're screaming, get on the fucking ground now. Don't fucking move, all this stuff. And you just drop like a sack of spuds. And then they just crush you, handcuff you. Lead detective wrenched me up, gets in my face. And from the police reports later, I learned this guy was my absolute nemesis.
He was your rival.
Yeah, Detective Reed.
Yeah, you know his name still.
He'd been on me for years.
Yeah. What was that like?
I would go in Indian restaurants. I read in the police reports. I'd be sat in at the table at an Indian food restaurant, and he'd be on the next table.
Yeah, just by happenstance. That's funny. Well, it must have been really unnerving to learn that they had been like kind of following you and investigating you for what was like 5 years or 6 years.
That took a while for them to give me the legal discovery, but it took months for them to hand all that over. So I'm thinking at this point, I've got no drugs in the house. Yeah, I've got guns, but I've got a concealed weapons permit. My gun's illegal. It was the police who trained me to shoot. The ex-police that trained me to shoot at a shooting range where I got my concealed weapons permit. And I'm thinking if there's no drugs, they're going to have to let you go. I didn't understand about conspiracies. And once I started to see all the other co-defendants who got arrested, and then when I saw my bail was $750,000 cash only, the bond, then it started to dawn, I'm not bailing out of here anytime soon. This is a heavy situation now. So I got my charge sheet, conspiracy, crime syndicate, blah, blah, blah. They had me as the head of the crime syndicate, and serious drug offender status, which carries 25 to life. And with all those charges combined, in my second year when I was fighting it, I was facing a maximum 200 years. So the stress level from that went through the roof. I was at the point of just slashing my wrists and bleeding out and ending my life. Yeah. When I was reading the police discovery, there was numerous times people had chased me in my car. I've got a twin turbo Mazda RX-7, so I'm just flooring it and just ripping off and leaving these people from behind. Well, it got to the point at the end of it where days before I was arrested, there was a bunch of cars following me. Put my foot down, I lose them, get back on the motorway, and then they're following me again.
Oh, wow.
Same cars. But I'm reading the police reports. By then, they'd put a satellite tracking device under my vehicle.
Oh, like one of those physical trackers they stick.
So no matter how I lost them, they could locate me right away and get back on my ass.
And you also found out later that they put a virus on your computer. Is that true?
Yes, my computer was warning me, but I didn't understand it. It was saying other people are in your computer right now and things like that. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I contacted some of my mates. And one of my mates warned me, but I just didn't think it was possible. I'm not very technical with stuff like that. But in the police reports, they had software engineers from Washington fly out because of all of this stock market data I was back to trading the stock market, was overloading the program. They had to fix it. But they had a NetBus Trojan horse in my computer, which showed them all my emails and showed them where I put my money as well.
Oh, okay. And then that's how they seized all that.
They seized everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did they do that remotely, like outside your house, like in the movies, or did they literally go in your house and like physically install that virus? I suppose they did it.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No.
Wow. You said that the lifeblood of your rehab in prison was due to books.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if you'll know the quote, but you definitely know the author. He says, many serious thinker has been produced in prisons where we have nothing to do but think. And that is Robert Greene, who is one of my favorite authors, perhaps my favorite nonfiction author, although you're a close second.
Thank you.
Yeah. How did Robert Greene or other authors who are no longer alive affect your ability to deal with everything that was going on in prison? Was that a slow process for you to get into books like that?
So you're going to meet Pepsi Watson, aren't you? And do
later today, actually. Yeah.
We just had him in this studio, and we just shot a podcast. I think it was about 2.5 hours long. The 48 Laws of Power in Prison.
Oh wow,
and
that's awesome.
We only got through the first 4 or 5 laws, so it's going to be a huge series.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
Robert Greene's books and in particular, the 48 Laws of Power, and more recently, Mastery, transformed how I interact with people in certain situations. Because when I was reading that book, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this scenario he's just described happened to me years ago, but I didn't understand this was a strategy and there's a counter to it. And I did the completely wrong thing.
Yeah, right.
So you're having all these revelations and epiphanies as you read these books. But from then on, and in prison, you've got all these cutthroats coming at you with these strategies. You've got counters for them, or you can use them yourself. Not necessarily 48 Laws of Power. It sounds demonic to some people, Machiavellian, like you want to just manipulate people and get ahead in life. But no, it's not about that. It's about mastering your own psychology and being successful in a healthy way. In the business world, there are a lot of mines, and if you know where those mines are planted, you're not going to step on them. So it really helps you get ahead in life. So I had a workout partner called Iron Man in the prison, and he was a huge fan of Robert Greene, and we just read, the books and discuss the books and everything. A lot of people get out of prison with addiction issues. He had addiction issues. He got out and became a top salesman in Arizona using all of the techniques from Robert Greene. Not scamming people. He was selling a genuine product and service, and the customers were very satisfied, and they were so satisfied he was getting loads of referrals, and he ended up making a lot of money through it.
Wow.
So, these are lessons from history like Napoleon, Marilyn Monroe, Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think people have this view of his books and him in particular as being, like you said, Machiavellian. But I kind of see it as a tool. Like you can abuse a knife, or you can use a knife to, make a sandwich. And you can also use it to defend yourself too, which I think is what you're saying. Like you're using it more so in the prison system as a defense rather than, maybe malicious offense, if we put it that way.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. A tool. And a tool is a neutral item. So you can put whatever energy you want into that, good or bad. And in the business world, if you want to succeed in the long run, you've not got to screw people over. You have to provide a quality product and build a good reputation. And I think that's why I thrived in the ecstasy market, was because, like I said, we tested the pills and we had a reputation for a good quality. So much so that the competition, when they were selling their pills, they would tell the buyers that they were from English Shaun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, it reminds me of, and with the Batman logo too, it reminded me of one of my favorite movies, American Gangster. I think they're selling heroin as Frank Lucas. And he did something similar where they branded it so they would know it was coming from the right seller or whatever.
Yeah. What's really sad, I've learned in recent years, is how the heroin dealers now will put a little bit of that extra strong substance in it, so it will kill some of the users, because then all the other users, that product will sell out because all the other users know how pure it is.
Wow.
Now that is Machiavellian.
Yeah. That's seeing human life as just dollar signs.
Yes.
So in the academic world, the subjects of psychology and philosophy often get teased in soft sciences in general, but you have testified to the fact that psychology and philosophy have changed your life for the better and helped you to deal with those situations in prison. And you read 1,000 books over the course of 6 years, and I did the math, and that's about a book finished every other day. How many hours a day were you spending reading, and how do you read a book?
In 2006, I read 268 books. I was writing them all down and rating them. This accelerated over time, and I would start the day out. We were allowed a little Walkman stereo unit, battery operated. So if I'm brushing my teeth, I've already got an audio book playing on my stereo. Go to chow, get back on my rack, my bunk, and then just start the reading until nighttime, till my eyes were red and sore, interspersed with other visits to the chow hall and exercise and playing chess or chatting to one of my mates or writing letters to people who contacted me through the blog and things like that, or to family members and loved ones. But in general, I was on the rack reading with this so intense rate that by the end of the night, my eyes were just like sore and red. And actually, when I got out of prison after doing that, I had become short-sighted, and the eye specialist said it was permanent. Yeah, but once I started doing regular walks in the countryside and
gazing in the distance, to offset that.
Over the course of a year, it came back.
Oh wow!
They told me I was going to have to wear glasses for the rest of my life. I'll get contacts.
Yeah, they have that problem in China. I read a lot because so many students, they're just such workaholics. They're always staring 8 inches from their face, just studying. So. And I think it's a problem that a lot of people have from screens too, is they're not
definitely
walking outside and gazing into the distance. That's great. You got your eyesight back though. That's really great. And this made me really happy is when you said that there were some books that you revisited and you just could not figure out what they were on about. Like you talked about Kant, Immanuel Kant, right?
Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason.
Yeah. It made me so happy because I was like, okay, we have a certified published author here, and he's admitting that he just does not know what this dude is talking about. Because I read a little bit of it, but just the general fact that sometimes I'll be reading philosophy, like he says philosophy should be easily understood, or any book, and I'm just like, wow, man, I'm not smart enough for this book. But sometimes it's the author too, though. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things Descartes said: if these philosophers are so smart, why can't they make it understandable to the layperson?
Yeah.
So Kant, you've got all this Latin terminology, and every sentence is just loaded with Latin and professorial verbosity,
academic jargon of the day.
I would end up just throwing that book at the cell wall every year, and then a year later I think, all right, am I smart enough to understand Kant now? And I pick it up and I get the exact same sickly feeling in my gut, and I just throw it at the wall again.
Were there any other books like that you're just like, I just don't know what this guy's talking about?
There was some Wittgenstein. And there were a few others. Was it Sartre's Critique, Time or Being in... I can't remember what the book was called. There were a few.
Yeah, a couple, but not too many.
Because even the ones, though, that wrote those books, there were some of the books you could understand. Kant wrote a book on, I think, about War and Peace or something that was understandable.
Okay.
Some of Sartre's other work was understandable. I mean, Nietzsche, some of his stuff is really hard.
You love Nietzsche, though, I remember.
Yeah, he was my favourite. I mean, Ecce Homo was my favourite of all of them. Because he just writes it in this in-your-face, smug way. Like, each chapter's got this headline, like, why I write such good books. Why I am so smart. It's just like, he's just taking the piss, It's just so funny the way he's done it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of funny stories about his quirks as a writer. I have not read any Nietzsche yet. I would love to, though.
Yeah.
And you talked about kind of that in-your-face writing that I think Robert Greene has a lot. He just gets straight to the point.
Yes.
Have you ever? I think it would be really interesting for you two to talk and for you to talk about your experience with
if he comes to London, I'd love to get Robert on the podcast, or maybe we could do something by Skype.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, because I know he would really appreciate, I think, your experiences and what you learned and how you used his knowledge in his books too. Because I remember you said one of your, I don't know if he was a friend of yours or not, but some inmate was using The Art of Seduction, which is also by Robert Greene, on the female guards, and he was succeeding with it, correct?
Yes. Every prison yard he would go to, he would use the techniques from Greene's Art of Seduction to seduce a female guard and end up having full sex with the guard. Then it would be discovered, and the guard would be moved, and he would be moved, and he would just do it all again at the next yard he went to.
Wow. Did they figure out a solution to that? Or?
They have permanently banned all Robert Greene books from the Arizona Department of Corrections.
And I think 48 Laws of Power is banned in all American prisons.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, the prisoners do try to smuggle them in, and librarians and stuff like that might get them in for them. And all my books are banned by the Arizona Department of Corrections as well now.
Thanks to Sheriff Joe, probably.
Well, the Arizona Department of Corrections classified my books as a threat to the security of the institution. Then That's separate from Sheriff Joe. Sheriff Joe was in the Maricopa County jail system.
Just the county. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in the long run, that might be actually better for your publicity, the fact that you got books banned somewhere, because I think, I feel like some of the best authors, in the history of, written literature, their books have been banned, at some point in time somewhere, so.
That's why my publishing company is called Gadfly Press, after Socrates, who was one of my favorite philosophers.
Oh, wow. What's called Gadfly Press?
Gadfly Press, because Socrates was considered the gadfly of Athens. Yes.
And I think I read this too about Socrates, is he put a lot of emphasis on, and the Greeks in general, on physical fitness and combining that with philosophy and how one kind of followed the other. What are you doing for physical fitness nowadays? Because I remember one of my favorite videos just to watch for entertainment on your channel was the one where you're dancing, like you're rave dancing in your parents' living room. And I watched
with the foot grab.
Yeah, with the foot grab. Yeah, I think that's part of the title too. So are you still dancing, or you still doing yoga, or what are you doing for fitness?
If I go dancing, I usually go to London to like a club or to a gay bar, because the gay bar vibe and the music in there is always
it's pretty lit.
Yeah. It's a really like friendly atmosphere. It's not got that meat market kind of atmosphere that you see in some other places. And for fitness, I did karate for about 7 or 8 years, and I do body combat, I do body pump, I do strike force, I do swimming, I do long walks in the countryside, I do yoga. So yesterday I did an hour and a half of yoga, and then in the evening I did a strike force class, which is intense cardio circuits, like kettlebells, burr crawls, push-ups, burpees, sprints.
Oh, wow.
So exercise keeps me sane. Yeah. The therapist said to me, if you are addicted to things and you're giving them up, you've got to put something in the space that's left behind. So sports causes the brain chemicals, the cascades, like the drugs causes it to cascade the endorphins, but it does it in a way whereby you're not going to get visited by a SWAT team.
Speaking of productivity and what you're talking about in general, you haven't done any drugs since you got arrested. Is that correct? Or is it?
No drugs, not even. I even quit alcohol. I was never a big alcohol user anyway. So
you had a brief kind of stint with it right after prison.
Right after I got out, hanging out with my friends in my hometown. It's quite regular that they go to pubs on the weekend and get wasted. We call it pissed in this country.
Pissed, yeah.
But pissed in America means getting angry.
Yeah, you get pissed off, yeah.
Yeah. So
That's a good kind of pissed.
I was getting pissed. And then all day Sunday, I've got this hangover. My judgment, my head is clouded. I can't get my writing done. And because I'm an extreme workaholic, anything that gets in the way of my mission gets eliminated at some point.
Do you, because you're a workaholic, and I don't know what, some people consider this to be part of sobriety or not, do you drink coffee or tea?
No.
No coffee, no tea?
No.
Nothing?
I drink glass bottled water.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Any nootropics of any sort? You know what a nootropic is?
No.
It's basically any sort of drug or substance that helps promote brain function or brain processing. Like there's, I can't think of any, modafinil is an example of a nootropic. So just water for you, water, exercise, and a good diet? Or?
My understanding of drugs from my experience is, and this perhaps might apply to what you're saying, is if you take any kind of drug that may make you feel extremely happy, such as ecstasy, for so many hours, or that may enhance your performance, like a nootropic, for so many hours, the body has a mechanism, a balancing function, and there's a cost of that overperformance.
There's always a side effect.
And your body's going to swing the other way. I believe if you are exercising regularly, if you are eating a balanced diet with a good amount of organic food, and you're drinking water, then you are going to perform optimally without needing to take anything to enhance your performance, which is going to cause you to slump in the long run at some point. Story of my life is I never let the stress out my system when I was working in the stock market. And that pressure built to the point where I exploded and melted down and turned to just mass drug use and insanity.
Well, that's good to know. And I think a lot of people watching this would appreciate that too, because I'm always interested in artists and creatives that I like their work. Like, do they drink coffee? Do they drink tea? Are they completely sober? So
that's what I do, and it might sound extreme to most people.
I think to most people it would. I understand it though. It makes sense to me.
And I don't judge other people. I mean, for 10 years I was doing every drug I could get my hands on, crystal meth, everything. 20 different drugs at the weekends. Because of the dead rats in the food, I also became a vegetarian. And people think if you're a vegetarian, you judge meat eaters. I couldn't care less. Someone could be sat next to me, eating meat, smoking crack, doing whatever they want, and I'm not a judgmental person in the slightest. If people want to choose to live their lives, that's their prerogative. And also what makes me mad about the war on drugs is that adults should be able to do whatever they want to their bodies without the government interfering and putting people in prison for drug use. Most prisoners were low-level drug users that I saw, and it's just this massive shakedown on the taxpayers, private prisons, and all the war on drug stuff.
You said once the taxpayers' money is a feeding trough to the corporations, to these parasites.
Yes.
That's related to what you're talking about now. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Okay. The government purse strings, the people in charge of that, whoever wins the election, they have this feeding trough then of multi-billions or even trillions of taxpayers' dollars, or in this country, pounds. They then become the biggest client to the corporations. So if you're private prisons, the contracts presently, get your nose in that trough, in the tens of billions a year. And how do the private prisons get access to that trough? They kick some of that tens of billions back down to the politicians in what's called political contributions. But it's really bribery.
Right.
So those contributions are in the tens of millions a year right now to the Republicans, Democrats. It doesn't matter who wins the election, they keep it going. But the private prison contracts are in the tens of billions a year.
Wow.
That trough, you've got all these other entities competing for that money. You've got the bomb makers, keep the war going, let's keep invading countries. You've got the pharmaceutical companies, make vaccines mandatory, all this stuff. Kids should be getting 100 vaccines by the time, all this stuff. I'm not against vaccination.
No. Yeah,
but over-vaccination now, I believe, is just a scam on the taxpayers. Kids getting almost 100 vaccines in America. It's absolutely ridiculous. I got, I think, 6 when I was a kid, and I'm perfectly healthy. Don't think people need up to 100 vaccines. Big Pharma, just, all these other things. America has got the most expenditure on healthcare. Yet it's got the sickest people in the world.
Yeah.
So that taxpayers' money that's going on healthcare is not, where is it? What's the point? Where's it going to?
Where's it going?
They put it in the pockets. So these corporations say they're going to do these great things for the public. Private prisons, we're going to reduce recidivism. We're going to save the taxpayers' money. But all they're doing is painting a picture so they can access that trough. And once they've got their nose in the trough, they do the complete opposite. They just put it in their own pockets. And
that's related to the Supreme Court decision. It was, I think, Citizens United in 2010 made it legal for those political contributions to take place from the big corporations. And it was really, really controversial in the States during that time. I want to read another excerpt from your book. In prison, gang rules dictate that people stick with their own race. So I'm taken by surprise when an almost 6.5-foot African-American shows up at my cell door. His physique so big that the inmates call him John Coffee after the innocent prisoner on death row in the movie The Green Mile. He introduces himself as T-Bone. He served almost 2 decades. He wants to chat about the history of England. I ask him about the massive scars covering his body. Every single one is from a separate life and death prison fight. T-Bone was one of your closest friends in prison. Who was T-Bone, for those that don't know, and what do you think you learned from him?
So because of the rules of racial division, I would never have just walked up to T-Bone on the yard and started a conversation with him, because he was a huge black guy. When I saw him walk across the yard, almost 6.5 foot, former Marine, biceps bigger than my head, it was like seeing something out of a Conan movie.
Yeah.
Like Schwarzenegger in his heyday or something. And then when he showed up at my cell, I thought, what's this guy after or something? He's trying to like shake me down for something or other. I'll turn around and see he's just stood there in the doorway and he only had his trousers on. So his body's covered in these scars, not little scars, like horseshoe-sized scars. And over time, I learned that each one was a different life and death prison fight story, as well as his time in the Marines. He'd seen action in the Marines. He had scars in the Marines as well. So he was the ultimate prison gladiator. And when I started to write his stories, I said to him, why don't we just use the name Scars as your nickname? And he said, no, he wanted to keep it as T-Bone.
Yeah.
T-Bone because he was on the football field. I think he knocked out his brother, and his brother collapsed on the field like in the shape of a T-bone steak.
There you go.
So T-Bone, when certain situations arose where people were getting raped or extorted, T-Bone, inspired by God, he was deeply religious, would step in and have fights with some of those people to protect these guys.
And defend them. And it was regardless of race too, right?
Some were regardless of race. And because of that, the prisoners were telling him, you can't do this. You can't police the yard. You're a cop. So then he'd be getting in fights with people who were calling him a cop and a snitch and all this kind of stuff as well. So it's a unique situation to see a guy in a completely cutthroat environment putting his life on the line for people that he barely knew who were getting victimized by rapists and extorted.
It's a very noble thing of him to do.
He's got a big heart.
Yeah, especially given the danger. And you have many fight stories on your YouTube channel. Short videos, 5 to 10 minutes long, sometimes longer, where you relay a fight story from prison. And T-Bone is featured in many of them. Very entertaining. I would highly suggest people go check those out. How would a smaller guy or a small guy like myself, I'm even smaller than you, Shaun, deal with living in the American prison system where big guys like T-Bone and big guys like T-Bone who, don't have good hearts, a lot of them they rule that environment.
If you're a small guy going into a prison system, it can work for and against you, and it depends how you carry yourself. The prisoners are looking at you as soon as you walk through the door. They've got this animal sensitivity. If you're showing any weakness or lack of confidence, if you're shuffling and over your head down, this guy's got something to hide. This guy's a weakie. Maybe we can exploit this guy in some way. They'll send someone to you to check out your paperwork and find out what your story is and see if they can use you up. If you go in there with a spring in your stride and your chest out and you're looking around like you're not giving off this energy of, I want to be a victim, if you're giving off this energy of confidence, then you're drastically increasing your chances of fitting in. Now, if you are a small, humble person, let's say, then you might not be viewed as a threat to some of these other guys, because big guys have got the highest mortality rates. There's a fight story on my channel, Buster Beats versus the head of the Whites at the time. It was this Golden Gloves boxer. It was one of the Italian Mafia guys, his goons. He never lost a fight, but he had to fight continuously to maintain the head of the Whites. And then he fought Buster Beats. He beat Buster Beats, but that fight story is so intense and long. Bits of teeth were knocked out. His fists swelled up to the size of a grapefruit. He quit being the head of the Whites after that. He was sick of all the fighting.
He retired.
Yeah. So if you're a big, tough guy, you're going to get challenged because people want to make a name off you, and you got to hold your place in that hierarchy. If you're a smaller guy, low key, keeping yourself to yourself, exuding confidence, perhaps you're just going to fit in, and no one is going to mess with you.
It's easier maybe to be the gray guy kind of and blend in if you're, not.
It is. If you are a gray man, there's always someone who's going to try and exploit that for their own jollies. I try to just mind my own business, but like when I had the cellmate was a serial home invader torturer. He didn't like me from the get-go. He wanted an old con.
Was that the Satanist with the pentagram?
No, that was in Supermax. This was over in medium security. This guy got his friend to attack me because he just didn't like me. And this was just when my parents had flown 5,000 miles to visit me for Christmas, just to spoil that. Prison, high school mentality with deadly consequences.
Yeah.
So if you're a small guy, mind your own business, then they're going to think, all right, why isn't he in the mix? Why is he minding his own business? Maybe he's up to something. Maybe he's a snitch. Maybe he's this. Maybe he's that. Bear in mind, 90% of prisoners are on heroin and crystal meth. So the thought process is getting paranoid about people minding their own business. The 10% who aren't taking drugs are considered lame.
Yeah. And that was you, where you were one of the lamos? Yeah,
considered lame because I'm in this 10%. But because they had people in there like Wildman and stuff like that, that enabled me to build a reputation and get some friends to protect me over time. So the key is to find out who's who and make alliances with the right people and not go in there bragging and not go in there egotistic. You got to have that balance between humility and confidence. And how you carry yourself is more important than your size. Now, if you're a small guy and someone attacks you right away,
you have to fight, right?
You've got to show heart. So they're going to come up to you and challenge you. And if you back down, if you wimp away, the gang rule is in the white race, if someone lays arms on you or calls you a punk or calls you a bitch and you don't fight back, the whole white race is going to attack you right away. So you have to show heart, and they might heart check you right away. Someone might come and challenge you just to see if you're going to show heart. If you stand up for yourself, someone calls you a punk-ass bitch, you got to say, all right, I'll see you in that cell under the stairs, and you got to fight with that guy. And then they've seen that you've shown heart, and at the end of it, that guy will be giving you a hug and a fist bump, and you're accepted.
Very, like you said before, like very primal kind of initiation.
It's a warrior society.
Yeah. As I said before, I'm from Wisconsin, and I really wanted to talk about the Brendan Dassey and Stephen Avery case, which you wrote a book about.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway through it, and I don't think the camera got it before, but we were talking, and it just makes me angry reading that, and I have to put the book down sometimes. Like, I find it easier to read about like 20th century genocide than it is to read sometimes books like that, where that sort of corruption gets rewarded within, I think you described it as an Alice in Wonderland justice system in Wisconsin. And could you briefly explain that? Because it's a very long story, and you have many videos on that on your YouTube channel, so people can go and check those out. But basically, these two men got wrongly convicted, coerced, confession, and one of them was actually legally a child at the time, 16-year-old Brendan Dassey.
It's heartbreaking when you watch Making a Murderer to see how these guys were set up and the extent of the corruption. And I've been ranting and raving about that for 10 years prior to that being aired. So I was like, thank goodness for Netflix. Now, recognition. You might think that that was an extrapolation. That was just one case of these people, these corrupt people doing this. But now, thanks to Netflix, we've got the Central Park 5. We've got the West Memphis 3. We've got the confession tapes. We've got the stir case. We can see this is happening over and over and over. And in my book, On Making a Murderer, each chapter is one of the methods that the prosecutors, the detectives, that law enforcement use, a strategy they use to frame innocent people. And it just breaks my heart that Brendan Dassey was taken out of his school, basically told if he confessed to a torture, rape, murder with Stephen Avery, he would be allowed to go home and watch WrestleMania. And when Brendan Dassey couldn't give the police the correct details, they said to him, well, what did you do to her head, Brendan? What did you and Stephen do to her head? They wanted him to say that he'd shot her in the head, the victim. And Brendan said, we cut her hair. No, Brendan, you didn't cut her. Oh, we punched her in the face. It's guess the answer, and Brendan fails the test of guess the answer. So the detective just says, no, Brendan, you didn't do any of those things. Just tell us who shot her in the head. Oh, Stephen shot her in the head. When that goes to trial, all the jury hears is that Brendan confessed that Stephen shot her in the head. They don't see all this other manipulation that comes before it. This is how sick these people are to kidnap a child from school, mislead them into thinking that they're going to be able to go home to watch WrestleMania and confess to this heinous crime while an actual rapist, murderer, torturer is still out there.
And he's also, from what I understand, mentally challenged. Is that true?
His IQ, I believe Brendan Dassey's was in the 70s. And there is not a shred of physical evidence that Brendan has committed any crime whatsoever. And in fact, he's such a peaceful, harmless person that in the prison system that he's been in now for over 10 years, if he was a violent person, he would have got some disciplinary tickets for having that nature. Brendan Dassey's disciplinary ticket in the prison system was for trading a ramen noodle soup. And people just trade things all day long in prison. That's someone just giving him a ticket for the hell of it.
I have a friend who's he's a black gentleman. He's older than me, and he's gotten, I think, used to getting harassed by authorities at times. And he put it very poignantly, I think. He says they just see you as points, kind of like points to add up to improve their careers, essentially. And regardless of how they can accrue those points, they're going to do it, which I think was a good metaphor. What do you think?
I woke up to this because in the county jail, my lawyer, Alan Simpson, he got Ray Crone off death row, snaggletooth killer. He was a postman. He'd been at a bar. Waitress was found dead because he'd been at the bar late that night. They thought he'd done it. Now, there was a bite mark and there was DNA. His DNA didn't match. His teeth didn't match. State of Arizona paid an expert witness $50,000 to say that his teeth matched. It's so common now in America, it's called testy lying. They gave Ray $5,000 to defend himself and spent millions putting on this theatre show to show that he'd done it. If you've got $5,000 to defend yourself when you're in court, how are you going to compete against the millions of the state? You can't. Court's theatre, it's not facts. They get out these pictures of the victims and show the wounds and get the jury having this emotional reaction. And then they talk about the victims' family members and get the jury having another emotional reaction. And that's it. Then once they've got this emotional side of the brain taking over, they swing these juries to get guilt. And guilt came down. Ray had been with his mum that night. His mum almost had a heart attack in the courtroom. He was in hours of getting executed multiple times. Stays of execution coming in. My lawyer, Alan Simpson, sued the state of Arizona to release the DNA, didn't want to release it. It matched a predator who was in the prison system and he confessed to a murder and it could have been solved just like that. But they don't want to give these DNA tests to guys because if they're proven innocent, they have to pay millions in compensation to some of them. The careers of the prosecutors, they've built their careers on these convictions. So they would rather execute an innocent person than have their own careers unwind. That is state-sanctioned murder. There are bigger criminals in the justice system than there are in the prison system. And the other reason they don't want an innocent person to be released is because they've gone to the victims, family members, and assured them we have got the right person. We've got the murderer. This person has been brought to justice. And once you've looked into a victim's family member's eyes and told them that, how do you think then it would feel to go back and say we had the wrong person? It's all about ego and egg on the face. So they would rather not pay these guys DNA tests and execute innocent people than have those consequences arise.
They want to save face rather than
save face, save money, and protect their careers because a lot of them end up running for political office.
It reminds me of an interview I saw with Robert Greene. I can't remember who was interviewing him, but he was asking Robert about like during wartime, like even in wartime, like you have to worry about these sort of things, like the human nature things. And he said, yes, even when people's lives are on the line, like there are people who care more about their ego than, human life, essentially.
And we all have the capacity in us to become killers. Those people in the justice system are killers. They're killing innocent people. The Nazis, they had butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, postmen, people from offices, people from everyday walks of life, normal families who would go and commit torture and murder on a mass, heinous scale not seen in the history of the world before, and then they just go home and have dinners with their families as if nothing had happened. They were all just normal people from society.
Mm.
So we've all got this in us.
Mm. Do you think that it's more of a human thing, or do you think it's better in other countries than it is America? Or is it just part of the human condition? That's
part of the human condition.
Yeah, to deal with these problems?
It's part of the human condition, because every countries are things that we've constructed. If you look at the complete history of the world, people form groups, and those groups find reasons to brutalize other groups and other people. Religion, politics, race, it doesn't matter what the banner is.
It's tribalism, right?
That's just how we form.
Mm-hmm.
That's always happened, and it goes on to this present day, and it's always going to happen because human nature is constant.
I saw a video, I think it was from 2007. Is the beard coming back anytime soon?
My beard when I got released?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, too professional for that now. You definitely look a little more intimidating with the beard and the shaved head, I think.
I'll let Wild Man look intimidating.
Yeah.
And the nice look.
It's interesting, on one of the YouTube comments when you guys were talking, people were like, is Wild Man sitting closer to the camera than Shaun is? Because he's so big. He's just a big guy, you know.
It's like a wall coming at you.
Yeah. So you're an author, a podcaster, YouTuber, former stockbroker. What profession would you try if you weren't doing the work that you currently are?
I'd just like to teach fitness classes, maybe.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to worry about money for the rest of my life.
Sure, yeah.
Because that way I'm exercising myself, and I like that vibe.
Yeah, and you seem like a good teacher, too, from your time in prison. I know you were tutoring inmates to read and write, right?
I even got authorized my own little yoga class by the end of it.
Oh, okay.
I was teaching prisoners to read and write. High school, GED, diploma, that qualification. And presently I still do inspirational talks in prisons, creative writing workshops and stuff like that.
And the Spanish speakers, too, you were teaching, right?
In the county jail, I was teaching in maximum security some of the Mexicans how to write home in Spanish to their loved ones because they couldn't write.
Wow. That's awesome that you did that.
Well, the Aryan Brotherhood wanted to attack me over that.
Oh, really?
Well, I had a cellmate who was an independent tough guy who intervened with the whites.
Was that Joe? Or
yeah.
It was Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had a lot of respect for Joe, from what I read.
Yeah, I was so lucky to get him as a cellmate. He got me out of some situations. As much as people came out the blue to harm me, people came out the blue to help me, like him and Two Tonys. Yeah.
That's awesome. Speaking of Two Tonys, I wanted to ask you about him. He had this quote where basically he's talking about being grateful. And he says, it might look like shoe leather and taste like shoe leather. And that's okay, because guess what? Ivan Denisovich would have snorted it up with his left nostril and been as happy as if he were having supper with the Russian president. So Two Tonys, you have a book about Two Tonys called The Mafia Philosopher. He was in the Mafia and he served life in prison until his death in the late 2000s, right?
Yeah, his total sentences were 141 years, and he was eligible for parole after 112 years. He worked for the Bonanno crime family under Joe Bonanno Sr., and a lot of his stories inspired the Godfather movie. And Two Tonys was classified as a multiple homicide murderer. So
I recall reading, you asked him once, I think you guys were chilling in your cell, and you were asking him if he could still kill. And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, could you kill me? And then without hesitating, he started to strangle you with a ligature or something like that?
Yeah, he jumped up with a cable from a Stinger heating filament, wrapped it around my neck, and started to choke me out. But just as I was about to lose consciousness, he let it go.
Wow.
So he said he was always ready because he had certain enemies in the prison system. And he was, if anyone came in, he was going to have to take action. But because he was old school Italian mafia, he never harmed women or kids. So those murders were all rival gangsters. If you've only murdered rival gangsters, you're top of the respect in the prison. He asked me to write his life story after we played a game of chess. He said he liked me, thought I was an honest person. And I was going in his cell for months on end, day after day. I wasn't supposed to be in there. And by the end of it, he said he felt like I was a son that he never had.
Wow.
When it was finally time to say goodbye at the fence, both of us, like, tears were welling in our eyes. Yeah, it was really emotional. But sadly, he died in 2010 from liver cancer from his own drug taking. I just did a TED Talk in Scotland. It should be going on YouTube anytime soon. All my TED Talks are on YouTube if anyone wants to watch them. And the title of this new TED Talk is Mafia Murderer Saves Prison Activist Life.
And it's about two Tonys.
It's about two Tonys.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really am enjoying reading his biography that you wrote of two Tonys. He seemed like he taught you a lot.
Well, that quote you said, Ivan Denisovich in the Russian Gulag under Stalin. These guys are getting worked to death in the cold. They're losing the nose, toes, fingers, ears to frostbite. Refused to work, dragged to death by a horse, thrown off a cliff, hung from a tree. So if the prisoners complained that breakfast was cold where we were at, the two Tonys would laugh and say where Ivan was housed, they were fighting over a fish eyeball in the soup just to stay alive. How can you complain when there's always someone worse off? So even with two Tonys sadly dying in 2010 from liver cancer, from his own drug taking, the spirit of him sure lives on in me in the sense that I do appreciate the small things. No dead rats in my food anymore. No cockroaches in my bed. I'm free. I'm in the West. All this horrible stuff going on around the world. And I just really appreciate what I've got after going through incarceration and getting my life back.
Yeah, it's a good lesson in gratitude, I think. And I think it was probably very much appreciated by not only you, but other prisoners at that table or whenever he brought that up.
Yeah, definitely.
And with the experience you've accrued in dealing with authorities, with police, with the justice system, what advice or knowledge do you think that people should heed when dealing with authorities, regardless of, demographic?
If you are in a situation whereby the police are telling you they're going to help you, you just need to talk to them because there's been a crime. Anyone who's watched the confession tapes or Making a Murderer clearly knows now that if those people who had been put in that exact situation had said, I'm exercising my right to remain silent, I would like to speak to a lawyer, those people would not be serving life in prison right now. They thought they were cooperating with the police because the police were going to get to the bottom of what really happened and they wouldn't get in trouble. Everything you say to the police is words, evidence that they can and will use in court against you. You are arming the police with every single word that comes out of your mouth. And they will take snippets of what you said to them and quote that at trial.
Out of context.
Yes. They won't say, we told Brendan Dassey that it wasn't cutting her hair that you'd done to her head. We told Brendan Dassey that it wasn't punching her in the face that you'd done to her head. We told Brendan Dassey who shot her in the head. And he just said, oh, that was Stephen. No, they will say, on such and such a date, during interrogation, Brendan Dassey confessed that Stephen shot Teresa in the head. That's what the jury will hear. They will take your words, they will embroider that into whatever they want to portray. I learned this because when I was dealing with the New Mexican Mafia, someone was pulled over leaving their house and that person spoke to the cops. And then I got pulled in and they stripped me down to see if I was wearing a wire or anything. And they thought that person was me. And I said, look, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I wasn't pulled over leaving this house. And they said, well, if you are pulled over leaving this house, you need to tell the cops you're too busy for them to search your car because they don't have the right to search your car. And if they take it further than that, you need to tell the cops your lawyer is Alan Simpson and you're exercising your right to remain silent. And that's what I did. When I got arrested, when the SWAT team came, me and Claudia in the living room in cuffs, and I start saying to Claudia, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. I'm not going to say anything to the police. And then they pull me away from her. And as I'm getting pushed down the stairs in my boxer shorts and handcuffs, I'm yelling, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. I am exercising my right. So Claudia hears me, so she won't say anything to the cops that will get her in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's very good advice.
Honestly, it breaks my heart when I see these people thinking that the police, by talking to them, it's going to help them, and they end up getting life sentences for murders they haven't committed. It absolutely breaks my heart.
Is there anything viewers can do for Brendan or Stephen?
To help Stephen and Brendan Dassey, you've got to ask yourself, what can you do with prisoners who've got limited access to things and activity? The two most important things, and these are gold to prisoners, are visits and mail. And mail could include like books from Amazon. You've got to find out what the rules are. My first videos on my YouTube channel about Avery were how to write to Stephen Avery, because he got hundreds of letters. People didn't put the prison number on the letter, his prison number. So all those letters got sent back. People don't understand the rules of sending things into prison. So if you want to write to Stephen Avery or Brendan Dassey, I've got 2 videos on my channel. Perhaps you can put them in the description box below this video.
Sure.
That tell you exactly their prison addresses and exactly what you can and cannot put in the envelope. You basically can't put anything in the envelope other than the paper you're writing on. If you put money in there, if you put stamps in there, if you put a return envelope in there, that's going to be classified as contraband and sent back to the person, the whole thing. Yeah. So there's all these rules. Next thing is visits. Visits are absolutely golden. If you can get out into the visitation room and spend some time sitting there with a visitor, and they have vending machines out there, sometimes you can buy like a Snickers bar or a burrito, stuff like that. You just really appreciate that time spent. So if people want to write to them, if people can get over to Wisconsin and visit them, these are the things that can really help them. Financially, there is Kathleen Zellner is the lawyer, and she's taking donations for the legal case. And then you've got the lawyer, the legal team for Brendan Dassey. They're also taking donations for the case, and I have donated to both of those. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely include all those links in the description.
Because you can put money on the books as well. You can send them money to spend in the prison. And I've done that also. And there are that again, you have to follow a complicated set of rules and procedures to be able to do that.
Okay. And I had another question too. It came to me when we were talking before. You said that the Mexicans and the Chicanos hate each other. Is that correct?
Okay. In the Arizona prison system since the late 1990s, the Chicanos, the Mexican Americans, just for people in England who don't understand this, these are people of Mexican descent born in America, versus the Mexican nationals have been at war.
Okay. And most Chicanos don't speak Spanish, or they speak very little Spanish. So that I was just wondering, because that's so, you would think they would kind of look after each other a little bit, more so than...
In Arizona, you got the old Mexican Mafia, got the new Mexican Mafia, and there's just a lot of political stuff that's happened over the years.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were a very prolific producer. Your whole life, you seem to be a very, like you said, you're a workaholic, and you're a high content producer, quality producer. Do you have any productivity tips that you've learned throughout your long career in various careers that you've had? Could you share those? If
you're producing content constantly, like Wildman calls me the robot.
Yeah.
He's got a timer now at the beginning of the videos. He's saying, I'm only not going to let Shaun get so many hours out of me today. If you are producing content constantly, or if you're in any high performance occupation, you've got to let your stress out of the system, otherwise it will all collapse. In the 90s, I'm in the office all day long, not letting the stress out of my system. It all collapsed. When I wrote my first book about Pablo Escobar Beyond Narcos, which did really well on Amazon, I was trying to time it for the premiere of the Narcos season. So for a month or so, I completely stopped all of my exercise and sat at my computer from breakfast till bed.
Wow.
I ended up with a trapped nerve in my neck, and I was on the verge of a frozen shoulder. This was 4 years ago, and I'm still suffering the effects of that now. It got to the point where this arm would go all the way back, and this arm would only go to there. Every 2 or 3 hours, I was waking up in my sleep in agony. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, I thought I'd done it by, maybe a karate injury or something. The doctor said, sitting and doing absolutely nothing is the worst thing you can do to the human body. 60% of the body is designed for movement. So even now, this will go back here, but this will only go to here. It won't go all the way back. Still, wow. I'm still out of alignment.
So you would say stretching and fitness is probably the best.
Like you mentioned about your sight. If you're sat on a computer all day, damaging your eyesight, not stretching your body, compounding the stress, mentally you're going to break down at some point because the physical controls the mental. You've got to take breaks. You've got to get off the computer, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's yoga, whether it's dancing, whether it's swimming, whether it's sports. If you don't take time out to let that stress out of your system, all that high performance that you're hoping to achieve is going to melt down, and you're not going to achieve anything. So to maintain that high performance in the long run, you've got to live a balanced life. And I'm an extremist. I take everything to extremes. Mm-hmm. So I learned through the trapped nerve and the verge of the frozen shoulder that I'd done it again. I thought I was trying to do a positive thing, staying on my computer all day. Yeah. But it's not a positive thing. It's unhealthy. That's self-harm. Yeah. Now that trapped nerve, I was so lucky because I was at a fitness class. That trapped nerve was bugging me for a while. I was at a fitness class. At the end, we were doing like these iron cross sit-ups where you just, you do the crunch and then you just go out like that with your arms. And there was an explosion of energy in my neck. Oh, wow. I had no idea what it was. It was like this fizzle, just like... And at the end, I told my instructor, hey, this just happened in my neck. And he goes, that was your nerve on trapping.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. You're on the way to recovery anyway. And a great advice on being a high-performance producer. You, since I want to go back to books briefly. You love books. I love books. What are two or three books that you have gifted the most?
What do you mean I've gifted the most?
You've given them as a gift to somebody? Or if you want to just pick one, you can.
Okay, so the books that I have given as gifts to people, it's got to be Robert Greene. We're just going right back to 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah, I think that one. And then I also love the Meditations, which I
Marcus Aurelius, I was going to say that next. And then Epictetus.
Okay, I haven't read him yet.
Yeah, Stoic Philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The Two Tonys. This is the one that I've sent a lot of people in prison a lot. It's called The Great Thoughts, and the writer, his surname is Seldes, Seldes. And Two Tony said that was one of his all-time favorites. It just goes through all these different quotes from all these different people throughout history.
Nonfiction?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
The Great Thoughts.
Great Thoughts.
Okay, I'll have to include that in the description too. I've never heard of it. I definitely want to check it out though. Yeah. Do you have any final asks, requests, invitations of the audience, or anything else you want to share you're doing the rest of the year in the near future? I know you got your true crime podcast, which you're doing pretty much every day, right?
Appreciate people supporting the True Crime podcast. I'm presently posting on Mondays now, 1 episode. I did have it up to 2 episodes a week briefly, but most of my true crime podcasts were completely demonetized by YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
That is a huge problem right now. With, the censorship.
In recent months, it's caused me to have to reappraise my business model. And in the last week, I've just set up Patreon, PayPal, and Just Giving, and Star something or other. Because I've been a YouTuber for 10 years. I've never asked anybody for a penny. But I was just shooting videos out of my bedroom and not even thinking about the costs or anything. I got my dirty laundry basket right next to me on some of my videos that have gone viral. But then once you get into the realm of filming podcasts professionally in studios, then that starts to rack up. And then when YouTube takes that money away from you, because it's all right paying, for the podcast to be produced if you believe it's going to get 300,000 views or 500,000 views, and that money's going to come back to you from YouTube, from Google AdSense. But when YouTube says they've got this demonetization thing on your video, you know you're never going to get that back. They do allow it to be partially monetized, but say 300,000 videos would have got you £300 back. If it's partially monetized, 300,000 videos is going to get me like $30 back.
Yeah. Why is that? Because it seems like they just keep doing that to people.
What happens is they send you a notification that it's been demonetized, and I think that's an algorithm. And then you appeal it, and there's a manual review, and the manual review determines whether you can have it back monetized or not. So I appealed all of my true crime podcast demonetizations, and the majority of them were denied.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, they send you a link, and you click on the link, and it tells you all the reasons why. So swearing, especially in the first few minutes, violence, sex acts, drug taking. And I'm true crime.
Yeah.
So all these things are in my podcast. They technically, wipe me out. So I hate asking people for money for the production. I could go back just to shooting little videos in my house and not incur any costs. But people are saying they love the production quality and they want us to continue. So the other thing I'm doing as well as the donations, it's not a paywall, it's just if people want to volunteer. The other thing I'm doing as well is if YouTube demonetizes a podcast, I consider that a pie. That's the whole pie. But if I put clips out, they are slices of the pie.
Sure.
So by putting those clips onto YouTube, if more than half of those clips don't get demonetized,
you get a few pieces here and there.
Then the pieces of the pie are making the money back individually. And maybe one of those little slithers of pie will go viral, and then that will cover the cost of the podcast.
Okay.
So right now, I'm coming up with all these different strategies to counter what YouTube has done to me. And, I accept this. It was painful for me at first just to get on my computer every day and see like 10, 20 more, 30 more videos demonetized. And the next day, same thing. And this happened very rapidly over a period of several weeks recently. It was very painful after me putting my heart and soul into all of this to see that happen. But then I took a step back and I thought to myself, in the business world, there's always going to be challenges. And whenever a challenge arises, you can let it crush you, or you can rise above it and come back twice as strong. There was the situation last year when my channel came under attack because of the first podcast guest that I had on. His video went viral. There are over 5 million views right now, Jamie Morgan Kane. And his clips.
Yeah, I saw you post about that recently.
There was a backlash against that, and there was an investigation recently, and they cleared him. A huge company is publishing his book. People said he'd made everything up from he wasn't even a UK citizen to being in the military and all this other stuff. But my channel came under such assault, and I got hacked, and criminal activity was committed against me. I got hacked. I got death threats. I got dogpiled. I got doxxed. So all these crimes were committed against me. I was being accused of committing the crime of defrauding the public by helping this guy set up a donation page, which a prison charity had asked me to help this guy.
Yeah.
I was accused of committing a crime that I hadn't committed. And all the people accusing me start committing these crimes against me.
Yeah.
So all these crimes, it was crazy. This went on for months. They had my home address, they had my phone number, they had all my bank details.
Wow.
They were putting it online. I lost my phone number I had for 10 years. All my schools, resources, my websites, wiped all my stuff. All the hackers took everything off the internet. So that was the first challenge to my true crime podcast series. And I was only getting one out a month because of all this stuff was going on in my life. Dealing with what I'm still dealing with this now. I just had to be sent a new bank card this week because the old bank card was compromised by the hackers from that situation that happened earlier this year. It's still ongoing to an extent.
Do you think this is some bigger hands at play or just a group of bandits kind of?
If anything goes big, then it gets a big backlash.
Yeah.
So this lynch mob forms, and it's a lot of people, and they have these campaigns where they target people.
Yeah.
So they targeted me, and all I was doing was interviewing a guy. So Louis Theroux has interviewed extremists. John Ronson has interviewed extremists. People have done... Louis Theroux's interviewed pedophiles? Does Louis Theroux get doxxed and dogpiled and hacked and attacked for interviewing pedophiles? Why does the interviewer get crucified in this situation? I don't understand. So in response to your question, that was the first assault on my YouTube channel. It set me back. I was only getting a podcast out a month. Got my mojo back. That died down. I'm getting up to 1 a week podcast, true crime. I'm up to 2 a week, briefly. Bam! YouTube comes in, demonetizes everything. So that's the second challenge. But if you are a high performance person, you're not just going to melt down over something like that. Every challenge in life is an opportunity for you to come back with a vengeance and adopt new strategies and put out even more content. So right now I'm putting 2 to 3 clips out a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome advice, Shaun.
Thanks.
Everything we mentioned, books, Shaun's links to his social media accounts.
Got 11 books now on Amazon worldwide. Ebooks, physical books, audio books, and my life story is Party Time, Hard Time, Prison Time. And then half the other books are about Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Got the longest book ever written about him in the world. Over 1,000 pages long. It's going to be a 4-book series. That's part 1. Part 2 just came out on July 1st. And parts 3 and 4 should be coming out in the next 6 months to a year. And this is all new stuff, all translated from the Spanish-speaking world. It's not stuff that's been written about him already in the English-speaking world.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's completely transformed my understanding of his story.
Did you use any of the TV show for research or no?
Narcos is a DEA fairy tale.
Yeah.
Where the good guys just go in and kick the bad guys' butts. It's a complete farce. They've weaved the major stories from Pablo's life, like the assassination of Galan, the Palace of Justice occupation. They've weaved all of these newsworthy stories into this fairy tale that the DEA are the good guys are just going in and taking down the bad guys with the help of the Colombian police.
Yeah.
Absolute nonsense. Pablo Escobar and the Cali Cartel, they decided who was the president of Colombia. Their money dictated who was the president. Then you got the president, he's taking their money, he's got to pretend to fight the war on drugs. You got the army chiefs and the police chiefs in the pockets of the cartels. And if the cartels go to war, you got rival police and armies fighting for the different cartels' turfs. So the police aren't just in there with the DEA kicking the bad guys' asses. It's complete and utter BS.
Do you think it's the same case with the... what's the Mexican guy? Chapo with the Chapo?
Oh, sure. And if you watch the El Chapo series on Netflix, give them credit. They show the corruption of the police departments in that series. And Narcos in the Narcos Mexico does show the corruption of the police. But it doesn't show the corruption of the police in the Pablo Escobar series.
Yeah.
But Pablo Escobar owned the police and owned the military.
Yeah, he owned a zoo too, didn't he?
He owned the biggest zoo in Colombia. And to this day, you've got this pack of rhinos running around, the biggest... pack of rhinos outside of
Africa?
Outside of Africa. Because the rhinos in Colombia don't have their natural enemies. The water in the river is running really slow. One of them, old boy, has got a harem at the top of the river, so they're reproducing like crazy. Locals castrated some of them to try and slow it down, but the rate of reproduction is such that they've got the biggest rhino pack outside of the natural habitat in the world in Colombia. And rhinos can cause a lot of damage to people. They can be quite scary.
Thanks to Pablo Escobar.
Thanks to Pablo. Yeah, they're still going.
I'm guessing they're going to have to do some culling of that population at some point. Well, thank you so much, Shaun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Addison. Thanks for coming all this way, brother.
It's really awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Cheers.
First of my authors that I really love reading that I've actually got to meet and chat with. So I really appreciate, and I love how close you have your ear to the streets. I think I appreciate it, and everyone who follows you on social media and your readers, I think really do too. So much love from all of us to Shaun Attwood. Again, I'll put all his books, social media, his YouTube, everything in the description, along with my own stuff. And until next time. Thank you so much, Shaun.
Cheers, mate. Enjoy England.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.